Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there, getting up and getting after it and having a fantastic start to your day and a great week out there so far. As we're a little bit closer to that weekend. Got you an update this morning on what's going to happen weather-wise for today. It's pretty active out there right now already. We have a steady just stream of heavy rain around this high pressure out here in the middle of the country in the south central U.S. So we have a flash flooding situation ongoing right now. And, after I made the video yesterday morning, I kind of mentioned that I'm not hearing a whole lot out of this area. Well, about 2 or 3 hours after I dropped the video, I was starting to see some stuff on Twitter, social media, showing some flooding in Missouri, places like that. So I hope you guys are okay, faring well. And I haven't heard of any loss of life. You guys correct me if I'm wrong there. But we'll give you some updated information on what's going on there right here at the beginning of this video. And then we'll talk about everybody else because I'm expecting a pretty active day. Today may be the most active day that we've seen over the last several days. We have an enhanced risk and we have multiple slight risk, level 2 out of 5. And then we have a flash flooding risk again today for a little bit further into the southeastern portion of the country. So we'll talk about all that. Before we get going, I do have a special prayer request here locally at the Easley Police Department. They lost a fellow officer. He was a young guy, only 22 years old. His name was Matthew Hare. So I'm just asking for prayers for the police department, the entire community, his family. He was assisting in a suicidal situation, and he was struck by a train. So it's an awful situation. Definitely just a special prayer request, asking for prayers for the community. This is locally here in South Carolina, so I appreciate that, and I know you guys will definitely pray over it. With that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and others can do so too. So let's get rolling this morning. It's going to be a pretty long one. All my videos are long, but there's just a lot of, when there's a lot to talk about speaking on each geographical region, you already know the video is going to just drag on, and that's the case. It's spread out all over the lower 48, so there's a lot to talk about. So we'll take a look at what's going on right now. High pressure is in general right over the same region, kind of right here in this region. I'm sure you can move this H a little bit further one way or the other. That is an awful circle, but you get what I'm saying. So flow is kind of going like this. And that is continuing to be the case, and it's actually going to allow showers and storms to move into areas of the mid-south to southeastern U.S., basically the southern Alps region. So the second arrow I just drew, kind of in, I would say, this region right in here, could get a lot of rain today, guys. And this is over some higher terrain of the southern Alps and Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia. I think this area is going to get a lot of rain today with just a ongoing what we call MCS, mesoscale convective system, and then outflows basically shoot out ahead of this convection. More convection evolves. Sometimes the other kind of complex of storms begins to weaken and another one forms. It's just the evolution. We call ridge riders around this high pressure, and this is the case. We're going to get a ton of moisture again that probably develops even into this region up into here. We're going to get some severe weather. We're expecting a pretty nasty line of storms to get going in this region right here. And then we have a deep upper trough digging in right into here. This is going to provide enough moisture return into this region and enough kinematics of that kind of mid to upper level flow into this region to provide the chance for some strong to severe storms into this area of the Northeast today. And I think tomorrow will be a bigger severe weather threat for you folks in the Northeast, and we'll talk about that here in the coming videos. But based off water vapor loop, this is what's going on. Hope that makes sense. I always like to start the videos out like this, but if we look at what actually is falling at the surface as far as rain, storms, things like that, you can see what's going on pretty well, okay? Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma down here, panhandle of Texas. High pressure centered right around down here. So you're just not getting much moisture, a lot of sinking air, so you don't get much lift for thunderstorm development. Excuse me. But up here in Nebraska, Kansas, this is where your flow goes. You guys continuously have these showers and storms that just rumble throughout the overnight hours, and you wake up to it somewhere in the plains in the Mississippi Valley as you're waking up for your morning. And this has continued to be the case in this region. And it's just a steady moist flow into this region. Okay, you got showers and storms in Nebraska, and this is trailing off into Kansas, making its way into Missouri. Excuse me. This is then making its way southeastward into the Boot Heel, Missouri, into Kentucky, southern Illinois, Tennessee, and even got rain that has now made it all the way to the upstate of South Carolina, areas of northeast Georgia, western North Carolina, even some light rain into Virginia and West Virginia. So this has already made it to the Carolinas. And now this storm right here has become severe warned here in the far northwestern portion of Tennessee. So a lot going on. This will look totally different by the time I drop this video around 8 a.m. But, I would definitely watch out if you're in western Tennessee, and then maybe eventually into northern Mississippi, northwest Alabama with this storm right into here. We keep going here. We look at the Storm Prediction Center. And that's what's happening right now. Okay, this will look different as we obviously get into the afternoon, evening, and overnight hours. But Storm Prediction Center, we got the flash flooding risk, which we'll talk about here in a second. But we do have a severe weather risk too. Enhanced risk right here, that's a level 3 out of 5 in the orange area. In the yellow area, that's a level 2 out of 5. In the dark green, level 1 out of 5. That's a marginal. Yellow is the slight. Orange is the enhanced risk. So this is right over where basically Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado connect. And what we're watching for in this region is a pretty substantial damaging wind threat in this region. We'll talk about that here in a second. And we'll break that down in detail later in the video. But there's a slight risk down here too, which includes areas of the Mid-South, the southern areas of the Cumberland Plateau, northern Alabama, northwest Georgia, southern Tennessee. And then there's a little itty-bitty slight risk up here in the northern portion of New York State, Watertown, portions of the Adirondacks. Expecting some severe weather in this portion too, okay? Bigger severe weather threat for the interior Northeast tomorrow. Tornado risk with all this, pretty low. If you really squint your eyes here, you do have a little baby 2% risk up here in northern New York State, and we'll talk about that in detail. And then we got the 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location in this area right into here. Okay, of the Mid-South, that same area that has a slight risk. Damaging wind threat today, just the general thing that comes with a slight risk, typically a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour in these two yellow areas and this yellow area right here. And then the 30% risk that you see right here, that is a 30% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher, 55 to 60 miles per hour. But you also have a hatched risk. So see the black lines going through this red area right here? That means you also have a 10% risk of significant winds, which is basically hurricane force winds or stronger, 65 knots or higher, which is in general around 70, 75, 80 miles per hour. So, or higher. So we're probably going to have a chance of that today. Well, we are. They're calling for it. So that's something you need to watch out for. Hail threat, pretty low in most of these other areas, but there is a 15% risk of hail with this line of storms we're expecting right here in the high plains. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So the Storm Prediction Center is definitely calling for a pretty active day. Sorry about the clearing of my throat, guys. But you kind of have a trifecta out here. 3 areas that have a slight risk. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if one of these areas upgrades to a moderate risk. If I'm going to call an area to do it, it'll probably be down here in the southeast. Pretty large slight risk. If confidence increases, if basically you get training of storms over somewhere over Tennessee, Georgia, northern Alabama, I wouldn't be surprised if they upgrade this to a red, which is at least a 40% risk, a moderate risk. But as of now, in all these yellow areas, you have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded. So flash flooding is going to be a threat today for sure. Watches and warnings, advisories, red flag warnings in the hot pink. You guys need some. Rain for sure. The purple right here, that's excessive heat warnings. No big storyline there. That has been basically the storyline for the whole entire summer. It's just been very brutally hot in this region. Excessive heat. Watches down here, okay, where they might upgrade these to warnings. We'll see what happens. Heat advisories. New Orleans has had, I think, their second hottest summer on record as of right now. It could end up being the hottest summer on record. It's been very, very hot in New Orleans, for example. Heat advisories over the entire coastline of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and then a few counties and Florida have this too. Flood watches up for the green counties and the little red areas that you see right in here. That is flash flood warnings ongoing right now. And if you look here, this is interesting. You see the gray, that is dense fog. What is that? Dense fog advisories. Yes, dense fog advisories right here. This is actually tells the tale pretty well. There's a boundary between the big time heat and the somewhat cooler temperatures. Not really cool, but cooler. And where the boundary is, typically you deal with fog. You know why? It's because you have a clashing of air masses. This usually creates a lot of fog, and that is the case in Iowa and surrounding regions this morning. Flood watches up for areas of the northern plains. We'll kind of talk about how much rain you guys could see. So you can pretty much tell where the ridge of high pressure is, basically where the high pressure is, based off these heat advisories, excessive heat warnings. All right, so let's break down the southeast. We got rain already that's moved into as far southeast as upstate South Carolina. We'll take a broad look at this. And this was what looks like it's going to unfold over the next 24 hours based off the HRRR model. We'll get the showers that continue to kind of drift throughout North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina. And then we'll watch with what I think could potentially be a more substantial line of storms that oozes into northern Alabama, North Georgia a little bit later this afternoon, and then these eventually could make it all the way to East Georgia, upstate South Carolina, maybe the Midlands of South Carolina. This could be more so in North Carolina, and this is when we watch for that moderate risk of flash flooding to be issued right here in this region, because what happens is kind of what happened in Missouri, right? You get a lot of rain early in the morning, early afternoon, and then later tonight into the wee hours of the morning for your Friday morning, there's the potential for another streamer of moisture right here that kind of gets kick-started here in southern Tennessee, northern Alabama. I mean, this is about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. So, you know, your rain today ain't the only rain you're going to get. You're probably going to get into the overnight hours too, and we could get a nasty line of storms. So let's go on and zoom into each individual region. Let's talk about just the southern apps, and here we go. We'll start off. HRRR model is doing a pretty decent job at picking up what's going on. It wants to take this severe warned storm that's severe warned right about right now, and by the way, the HRRR model is lagging with this. It's saying that this is supposed to be here, what is this, about 2 or 3 hours from now, and if you look at the radar, it's already kind of right there right now. So you kind of see what I'm saying. You compare this with what the HRRR model is saying right here. It's already quite active. So we'll start off this morning getting my Google Maps ready so I can just kind of mention a couple towns and cities like I like to do here. And you keep this going here. Just general showers. I mean, some of these could be severe, but I'm thinking just more light to moderate, maybe at times heavy rain in southern Kentucky, western areas of Virginia, the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. You work your way a little bit further west and southwestward. This is where you worry about a tornado threat and a damaging wind threat right here. Northern Alabama, kind of northwest Georgia, southern and southeast Tennessee. We take it to about midday, okay, lunchtime. Here comes some storms. Huntsville, Alabama. Watch out late morning, early afternoon. Even though it just shows more consolidated rain here in North Georgia, it could very well be in the form of strong to severe storms. A lot of heavy rain moving into the southwest mountains of North Carolina, the southern Alps region, the mountains of Georgia. We keep this going. And I do want to note here, this is about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon this afternoon. I could see that this area being a lot more active than what the HRRR model was showing. Okay, so I've gone and just let you know that right off the dot. It's very possible. You keep these going, it shows a pretty active early to mid-evening here in the upstate of South Carolina, even eastern Georgia. A lot of heavy rain still falling. And I'm telling you, we're going to have some flash flooding, I'm thinking, in the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee potentially later today. Okay, you keep this going. We've just got general showers over Virginia. Nothing too substantial. Some heavier pockets of rain as possible. It shows a more consolidated area of moderate to heavy rain, maybe in the form of some storms moving into central South Carolina. And then watch what happens, okay? You get this area of high moisture that really gets going off this boundary right here, separating stable air with unstable air. Basically, drier, cooler air, wouldn't call it cool, with definitely high humidity air, more moist air, and warmer conditions, hotter conditions. And that boundary is right in here. And storms love to just kind of form around this boundary where there's better lift. And that's what's going to happen. If the HRR model is correct, you really got to watch out for Huntsville, maybe up to Nashville, even back to Jackson, Mississippi, Huntsville down to Atlanta, Chattanooga. Got to watch out. Athens, Georgia. A steady stream of showers and storms get going, kind of like what we saw in Missouri. Okay, and then they last. They kind of get cranked up, I would say, as early as around midnight, and then they begin to kind of drift through this area. This area of showers and storms could very well be right here. It could be right here, okay? But we definitely got to watch out for some powerful storms later tonight. Tornado risk is in this region today, damaging winds and flooding. We look at the NAM. We'll go through this much faster. It shows a lot of heavy rain over the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina, eastern Kentucky also, and southwest Virginia, okay, throughout the day. It really does. And models kind of agree on this area of storms in upstate South Carolina and northeast Georgia. So we'll watch for some stronger storms maybe this evening. It's quite possible that might could drift into the Midlands of South Carolina late evening. And then both models kind of do the same thing. It kind of develops more storms around this region right into here. And for my folks in Western Tennessee, I'm not meaning to leave you guys out, but you guys could definitely experience showers and storms all day today. There might be a little break this afternoon and late this evening to the overnight hours. Could get cranked up again. This is around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You got a line of storms surging through Georgia. So yeah, could be quite active in this entire frame you're looking at. Rainfall between now and the next 24 hours. Into the southeast. It really likes the area of northeast Tennessee, getting 4 to 5 inches of rain, but this could very well be a little bit further south. Look at western North Carolina. Okay, higher elevations in this area of North Carolina. If you're not familiar with this geographical region of the country, you got definitely some of the higher peaks of the Appalachian Mountains. Shows a lot of rain into the upstate South Carolina, North Georgia, eastern Georgia, and then it shows another area developing later tonight, but this is a lot of what's falling right now. But this is also picking up on what could happen overnight tonight too, where we're going to get another 2 to 3 inches of rain. So this could be more filled in right here. This isn't exact, but this is the National Weather Service forecast. A lot of rain into this area throughout the day. You look at the updraft Felicity swath. We got to watch for this line of storms that moves through this area. Normally right below these storms, the southern boundary of these storms, that's when you have the best ingredients for severe weather. Typically into the cluster of storms, that's not where you have a lot of breathing room for these storms to really take advantage of the little bit of ingredients that are there for a tornado. But I would watch out Huntsville, Alabama, northern Georgia to Chattanooga region. Watch out the southern, maybe Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee. There is some hills into this region. What people don't realize is Alabama. If you've never been to Alabama, Alabama is a really hilly state. I did not realize that until I chased it for the first time a couple years back. I mean, I got all the way down to like southwest Alabama, and there was still pretty substantial hills. It's pretty wild. You wouldn't think that. Birmingham? Would you think Birmingham has hills and mountains, things like that? I mean, it kind of does. It's very hilly. Not everywhere, but certain areas. Didn't know what that was. I don't know if that was a train or a rumble of thunder. But anyways, if you geographical information there, it is pretty wild. Florida, typical flummer type stuff, typical summer type stuff, some pop-up showers and storms. I would say that it's a little bit more active from maybe Orlando points southwest. I think the southwestern and southern portion of the state could get pretty active later this afternoon, this evening. So if you're vacationing down Fort Myers, maybe Tampa Bay, down here in this region, definitely going to have a chance to see some showers and storms today. My folks in the Northeast, deep upper trough digging into the region. I think Maine, I think you're a little bit too far north for really any strong to severe storms, but you guys are going to get an area of showers that moves through early to mid-afternoon. So if you're somebody who tunes in from like the western, northwestern portion of Maine, definitely let me know. I know I have a couple people who tune in from Maine, but definitely let me know what you guys see out there. I would love to get weather reports from Maine. Definitely a state that I know you guys are going to call me crazy, but I would love to live in Maine. People are like, man, you're nuts, dude. But I love winter weather and fall. You keep this going here, and this is what we watch. Some storms will begin to develop later this afternoon in this region, and then all this energy begins to swing through. And I think it's going to be quite active in the northern portions of New York State, northern Vermont, maybe even New Hampshire. So we'll zoom into this region right here, and we'll talk about it. And, you know, guys, I wouldn't rule out some showers and storms in Pennsylvania later today. Southern and southeast PA, definitely possible for sure. And, you know, it's going to be kind of a rainy day for you folks down here in kind of central and southern Virginia. But you just don't have the ingredients for really any storm action. I mean, you could get some storms, but definitely nothing severe. And some showers eventually will drift into the southern sections of Maryland too. So don't want to leave you guys out. You guys in the southern Delmarva area could certainly get some shower activity. You might make it as far north of Washington, D.C., but most of us stay south of that region. New York State today, pretty active. Ingredients build in. Some storms begin to fire. You're going to have to watch out in Burlington, Utica. I probably pronounced that wrong. Watertown. You guys, Potsdam, Brockville. Heck, I can't tell if that's in Canada or New York State. You know, I'll keep it real with you guys. If I mess something up, tell me. But these storms are going to fly right over the northern portion of the Adirondacks. I mean, this is 5 p.m., this is 6 p.m., a little bit of storm action just south of Burlington, drifting into Vermont. Then we'll stop it right here. I wouldn't be surprised if the storm's a little bit more widespread, a little bit further south. I might actually go more towards the NAM, which I'm about to show you. But these storms will have a little bit of a spin to them. 500 millibar, basically mid to upper level. A jet moves through this region. This provides a lift and a little bit of a push in the atmosphere for damaging wind. So you're going to have a damaging wind threat in this region. A very small tornado threat. Can't rule out some isolated downpours in the southern tier, Finger Lakes region of New York State. You keep this going, and could have a pretty substantial line of storms that flies through the northern Vermont area later this evening, 8, 9, 10 p.m. What is that? St. Albans, Newport region, Mooresville, Stowe. I know Stowe. That is one of my dream places to live. This flies through the northern portion of Vermont, extreme northern sections of New York State, and produces a damaging wind threat for sure. This continues. A lot of rain could fall too. I mean, you're getting into about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's still storming in Vermont, northern portions of New York State. And I mean, it continues. So I wouldn't be surprised we get a good little bit of rain. In fact, I'm kind of surprised they don't have a slight risk for excessive rainfall into this region of northern Vermont and northern New York State, to be honest with you. If the HRRR model is correct, you could have some training of some storms. We look up here with the NAM. The NAM wants to just say, hey, we're going to have some showers and downpours around basically the entire day. But, you know, the Finger Lakes region is pretty consistent between the two models on some downpours developing. These could be some in the form of some storms. You keep this rolling here. And then, you know, this is around 8 or 9 p.m. It's quite stormy in the Adirondack region. You know, basically in this entire region right in here, which is very mountainous from what I believe, it's definitely going to be quite stormy. In fact, what is that? Is that Saranac Lake? I should know because that is, I think, an area that is notorious for getting very low as far as temperature. Definitely, like I said, if I mispronounce anything, you guys are always very kind. Definitely tell me what it is. Chances are you'll tell me and I'll forget in the next video and then butcher it again. But Post Malone up here. You guys might see some storms for sure. You guys probably definitely will see some storms. If you're any kind of small town or community in northern New York State, you folks are definitely going to see a solid chance. I'm almost can give you a sure bet you're going to see at least rain today. But these continue. Tornado threat, damaging wind threat in this entire region, right up into here, all the way down, maybe into the valley regions of New York State. But it definitely isn't quite as active, not near as active for Vermont than the HRRR model is. So we'll see what happens. It develops another area of storms like in the wee hours of the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning around Watertown. And yeah, just a stormy day pretty much for the northern Vermont region and New York State region for sure. Updraft Felicity swath based off the HRRR model does show some rotating storms into this region where you have the highlighted colors. This symbolizes storms that could have some rotating updraft action with it. So we'll watch for maybe a brief tornado warning or two up here today. And you look at what's going on. You got this upper level jet, this kind of mid-level jet, I would say, kind of slashing through this region. Typically on the exit region of this jet, that is typically where you get some storm action, and that is what's going to happen today. Sorry, got the hiccups a little bit. Moving into New York State, and you're going to have plenty of lift into this region, a little bit of a 30 to 40 knot mid-level jet into this region, providing lift, kinetic energy for some showers and storms into the interior northeast. So that's kind of what's driving this today. You're going to have a little bit of a moisture pull into this area, and then behind this upper trough, a little bit more dry and cooler air moves right back in for you folks. So South Central U.S. will include the severe weather threat and the high plains in this section. I will say you cannot rule out some storms in around the Kansas City area through Columbia, Missouri, basically through central to southern Missouri today, the Boot Hill of Mizzou, northern Arkansas, northeast Arkansas especially. I could see some strong to severe storms into this region today. I don't think they're going to be near as widespread as what we have seen the last few days, but definitely watch out into this region right here. But the big storyline is what you're seeing right here. Some storms are possible in the Panhandle of Oklahoma and northern Texas, so we can't rule this out, but this is really going to be the focus here in a second. But like I said, Boot Hill, Missouri could get active later this evening. It's quite possible for sure. This will kind of be the initiation point of what could be some big-time storms that get going later tonight, and a flooding threat that develops later tonight deeper into Tennessee, further east in northern Alabama, northern Georgia, which we've already talked about. That could develop later tonight. But let's zoom into this where we have the enhanced risk, and this is Colorado. For you folks that I know, Colorado just pretty much looks like a giant rectangle, so it's hard to tell what state it is sometimes. But storms initiate right around Denver, like they like to, right up against the Front Range. Could get some storms as far south as Pueblo, down here, and also in just in southern and southeast areas of Colorado. And this is around 3 to 4 p.m. These storms get going here, and then they grow up scale. So we'll stop it here. It's around 5 to 6 p.m. You got storms cruising up Interstate 76 up towards Fort Morgan, Sterling, Greeley. You guys are being heavily impacted. Can't rule out some strong to severe storms. Like I said, down here in southeast Colorado, this is around 7 to 8 p.m. But this is where I think the biggest threat will be. If you're in northeast Colorado, I would really pay attention to the weather today. It could get quite active. But Julesburg, you're right in the middle of the enhanced risk. And these continue. This is around 7 or 8 p.m. Big storms riding through northeast Colorado. And then it really develops into a powerful line of storms right as the sun is setting around 8 to 9 p.m. and is blasting through the Ray area of Colorado and then heading into Nebraska and Kansas. Okay, and we'll break them two states down here in a second. But as far as the tornado threat, very, very low today. In fact, it's not even a 2% risk as of now. I do want to always make a quick reminder. I'm making this video as of around 7 to 7:30 a.m. So the Storm Prediction Center literally normally drops new updates about an hour and a half after I've dropped these videos, so it makes it old information. But the winds with these storms are going to be could be a pretty big deal today. In fact, we'll stop it here. It's around 7 p.m. Look at these strong winds riding right up Interstate 76 and just south. What is that? Holyoke? You folks in Colorado or anybody definitely let me know. I swear about 25-30% of my comments are people correcting me on the way I say things. I'm actually a little bit better at pronouncing things than what I lead on to be. When I have so much information flooding to my head, the longer I spend on it, just like the longer I'm spending talking about it, the more my flow gets messed up. But damaging winds are definitely going to be a big deal in these pockets of red and deep orange you see right here. That's 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gust indicated off the HRRR model. It does overdo it sometimes, but I definitely think that is a strong possibility today. We're going to get some storms that are going to try to produce hurricane force winds where we have just a nasty line of storms. And this is basically the upper portion of this ridge. Okay. We move into Nebraska. It gets quite active in Nebraska late afternoon, early evening. Some storms really get popping off here. Alliance, Scotts Bluff, you guys are getting quite active. These storms will be centered right along Interstate 76. I think areas like, what is that? Ogallala, right around 76. You guys could get quite active around late evening, 10, 11 p.m. Watch out for a line of storms that's moving in. Imperial, you guys quite active. And then once again, for you folks in kind of central Nebraska, just another active night. North Platte. You guys let me know if you're viewing for around that region. Let me know if this verifies. Do y'all get some bad storms after y'all go to bed every night? It just seems to be the case. Every time we do this in the morning, it seems like these storms just want to roll through after the sun goes down well into the overnight hours. But these are continuing to kind of ride that Nebraska, Kansas state line, and they continue. It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning at this point. These are blasting down 76, heading towards Kearney. And I think if we're looking at the ARRR model, it wants to transition the worst of the weather back down. And as we're waking up tomorrow morning, well, I don't know if there's a lot of people waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in Nebraska, but as we're getting into more so tomorrow for your Friday morning, it shows the worst of the storms into Kansas, which we'll talk about here in a second. But we'll talk about the damaging wind risk in kind of western Nebraska, central Nebraska. Here it comes. I mean, these storms look pretty intense coming up 76. Basically, if you're, I know I keep kind of saying that same area, but if you live along Interstate 76, and I would say an hour north or south of the highway, I really think you guys, especially south, I think you guys are definitely going to get some late night damaging storms as far as winds. So please be aware of this. You have an enhanced risk for a reason. And these are just continuing. We get to the midnight time frame. And yeah, the biggest threat I would say shifts into Nebraska, though, as you get deeper into the night. We look at Kansas. Same deal. We just kind of showed most of Kansas there, but you know, for you folks in Kansas, if you're in Goodland, Colby, these are riding down Interstate 70. So you got the 76 corridor, you got the 70 corridor, and these are riding through Oakley. These will, I would say Colby, or Goodland to Colby. I say these could impact you maybe around the late evening, midnight time frame. They start get closer to the Oakley region around midnight to 1, 2 a.m. And these are just kind of riding down the interstate. They start to affect the Hayes area, probably around to the wee hours in the morning. And then the Hutchinson region, same kind of time frame. And then these are, we're going to see what these look like. Typically, they hold together more than what the models show as they get a little bit closer to the Kansas City region as we're waking up tomorrow morning. But damaging winds with this too, guys. We really need to watch out for this as basically this enters the state maybe around 7 to 8 p.m. from the west, and then basically goes across the entire state throughout the overnight hours. It takes about 10 to 12 hours across the entire state of Kansas and pretty much Nebraska too into the overnight hours. Please be careful in this region for damaging winds. Yeah, y'all got any questions, definitely put them in the comments because sometimes the details are missing here. The rest of the north central U.S., some severe storms are possible in eastern Michigan. It's not showing very widespread action in western Michigan. If you're in Detroit, definitely anybody kind of bordering Lake Huron, for sure, you guys definitely could see some storm action today. Just not showing very widespread action, but some showers, some storms are possible. We've already talked about this in Nebraska and Kansas. And it could be very wet in western kind of South Dakota too, for sure. But everybody else, you know, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, Illinois, pretty quiet today. Not a whole lot going on in this neck of the woods. But the northern plains, for sure, a lot of storm activity. But I just think you're kind of missing some ingredients for these to be severe. Now, if you look back here, the marginal risk does extend all the way almost up to the far southeast corner of Montana. It does extend all the way into South Dakota, Rapid City. So, you know, I should tell you right there that we could get some severe storms in extreme eastern Wyoming, western South Dakota. Maybe even some of these could hit strong to severe limits. And southeast, if you live in southeast Montana. So basically the high plains region right into here definitely is going to be a stormy afternoon and evening. And this eventually will kind of dwindle away and drift a little bit further eastward into the Dakotas and Nebraska. But we could still be left over some showers and storms into the overnight hours in this region. But definitely very active. I mean, southern Montana, definitely a showery kind of stormy day. But the further you work into the southeastern portion of the state, could be more in the form of storms. Yellowstone National Park, western Wyoming, quite active, a lot of rain. So if you're visiting the national park out there, definitely could be a stormy afternoon and evening for you folks. Rainfall from this, I mean, it's like almost over an inch of rain in western South Dakota. In areas that likes a lot of rain from this complex of storms here in southern Nebraska and northern Kansas. 1 to 2 inches of rain, maybe 3 inches of rain from this. So you do have the slight risk of excessive rainfall in this region. A lot of rain can fall in Yellowstone, places like that. The Rockies, just a lot of moisture. We kind of already talked about this area right here in the northern plains, but Utah, some storm action, especially in southern Utah, and also in kind of extreme northern Utah, storm action is possible here later this afternoon, this evening. Eastern areas of Idaho that eventually drifts into the western Wyoming region. Some heavier rain is possible. And then my folks in Oregon, you guys, if you're doing any hiking or anything like that, there's going to be some heavy rain that falls in Oregon. I would say kind of east central Oregon, eastern areas of the state. Definitely an area of rain right in here. I don't ever get very detailed with you folks out here. But, you certainly could get some rain that could eventually drift into the Boise, Idaho area. But what is that? The Blue Mountains of Oregon. Just going off old Google Maps. So if that's not what y'all call them locally, definitely correct me. But definitely a lot of rain could fall. Northern Nevada, a lot of storm and shower activity in this region too. And this could last throughout the overnight hours and eventually kind of dwindle away. A lot of moisture, but not as much for Arizona, New Mexico today, Southern California. Temperatures will remain pleasant up here in the Northeast, but definitely warmer. And of course, you got some more moisture return, so you'll notice an uptick in humidity probably in New York State, PA today for sure. A little pocket of cooler air right here in the southern Alps, and this is just due to all the cloud cover and rain. I mean, this will even be the case into South Carolina, where temperatures are probably only going to be in the low to mid 80s. But as soon as you get outside of this boundary of rain, cloud, cooled air, it warms up substantially. For example, before these storms move into like Huntsville, Alabama, it could warm into the 90s, but then they move through. It cools you guys down. The extreme western portion of Tennessee could, Memphis could try to get to 100 today, but if you work away about 2 hours more into Tennessee to the east, I mean, you guys could just be in the 80s today, okay? So it's tricky. It just depends on when the storm goes. It's going to be pretty hot up here. Definitely a lot more heat building into the upper Midwest, north central U.S., 80s and 90s, probably get into the low 90s in Minneapolis today, even some 90s in central Wisconsin, warm into the UP today, UP and Michigan, south central U.S., though high pressure overhead, temperatures well into the upper 90s, 100s. What's new? Brutally hot temperatures. That's be nice if we can get something new, that's for sure. Right here in the center of the Rockies, cooler, rain-cooled air, so that'll keep your temperatures down, but outside this kind of spin of rain, if you will, temperatures will probably warm into about average to slightly above average temperatures, 80s, 90s, higher elevation, 60s and 70s. So that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Have a great Thursday, and I'll talk to you soon.